I mean, as much as I'd love to like make a mark on the world and like, start the next Tesla or whatever it is, it's like the stuff that's important is being a good dad, being a good husband.
Welcome. This is the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping others through real estate investing. Our hosts interview guests from all aspects of real estate investing who generously share valuable experiences and advice. Whether you're starting out or an experienced investor, this is the show for you.
How's it going? My name is Travis Shelton, and welcome to the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast, where I interview guests who want to help others investing in real estate. We keep these podcasts quick, fun, and full of value. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm really looking forward to a great conversation today with our guest, a friend, father, and future husband, Andrew Linderer. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Andrew, can you give our audience a little bit, maybe your 30-second elevator pitch, a little bit about yourself and, your focus in real estate?
Yeah, for sure. So I spent the first 10 years of my career as a pastor and then completely moved over into the IT field and kind of grew from, entry-level IT to now where I'm managing our service desk. And all along the way, I've always been interested in real estate, so I've kind of dabbled here and there with some flips and some different stuff like that, but have never been able to like go all in and do it fully, full time. But it's always been an interest and a passion of mine. So
that's great, and I'm especially looking forward to our conversation today. But we always start our podcast out with some motivation. So what's the motivational quote you'd like to share today?
Yeah, so my quote is from actually a martial arts instructor. It's the guy that started the ITF, which is one of the largest taekwondo groups in the world. But he said, pain is the best instructor, but nobody wants to take his class.
When I read this, I was like, wow, I love that. I'd never heard of it, but yeah. Tell us a little bit more. Why'd you pick this motivational quote?
I think that's a great thing for life, right? Like it's, building a real estate business or starting a family or, jumping careers or whatever you're doing in life, it's going to hurt. And if all we ever do is try to avoid pain, we end up, fat slobs that sit on the couch and watch TV all the time. And so that idea of like pursuing pain or pursuing something difficult because we know that's the best teacher, that's the thing that's going to like get us to the next level, change your mindset into like, okay, now I'm going to intentionally go to the gym even though I know it's going to suck. I'm going to intentionally like eat stuff that doesn't have sugar in it even though it's painful because I know long term like it's a good thing. And so it's the same in like every avenue of life. It's like do the hard thing, do the painful thing, because that's what's going to be the best instructor for you or the best teacher.
Yeah, I mean that's really powerful and definitely something I think that we've seen as a common thread with a lot of motivational quotes we have, and just a lot of our guests that we've had is you have to endure something, right? Like it's not always an easy path, but once you endure or kind of get over that hurdle, then it seems like those lessons and the feedback you receive and it just makes the journey that much more, powerful or just more fun for everybody. So I love that. I love that quote. So I'm going to keep that one for myself.
It's a good one. And I think it goes in line with so many of the others, like the more you sweat, the less you bleed. And all the, that concept of just like, you don't learn stuff when you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't grow when you're comfortable. You grow when it hurts. So
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into it then. How can you help our audience of real estate investors?
I can help by asking the dumb questions. I think I've kind of dabbled in a bunch of different stuff, but I'm trying some new things coming up, and so we kind of have I'm hoping a cool idea to kind of talk through, but basically position myself as the idiot and ask the dumb questions and think through kind of, okay, how should I do this? How should I do that? And ask the questions that most people are probably thinking, but maybe too afraid to ask.
All right. So with some background, Andrew knows exactly what he's doing, but he's recently engaged. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And so the situation's basically you have a home and your fiance has a condo, and you have some questions about potentially transitioning that condo into a rental property. And so you kind of approached me, said, you've gone through this, right, with Erin, my wife, and, what are some things I should consider? What are some things I should think through? And you wanted to kind of pick my brain. And you actually brought this to me and said, I think this might be really valuable for your podcast audience. And I couldn't agree more. So we're going to change it up a little bit from the normal theme, and we're going to have Andrew kind of ask me some questions or things he might be able to consider when really marrying into a rental property. So go at it. You can pick my brain.
One of the things that I've been thinking about and trying to figure out the best way to do is her condo is in an HOA. And so writing a lease with the HOA in mind, how is there anything that you can think of that you would make sure you want to include in there to make sure that we don't get sideways with the HOA in the condo?
I mean, number one is making sure you know what's in the CCNRs of the HOA. Is there a minimum length rental? A lot of HOAs might have a 30-day minimum lease, so that might preclude you from a short-term rental perhaps, but doesn't preclude you from potentially a mid-term rental or just a long-term traditional 12 2-year month lease. So that's really where you got to lean on, is what is in those CCNRs. And as long as there's nothing that precludes the rental, then those people have full access to anything the HOA has. So whether it be a community center or a pool, they should have full access for that. So really just lean on those individual CCNRs for the property.
And then would you structure it the same way that you would do rent, where they pay me rent and I pay the HOA, or do I set it up where they pay straight to the HOA?
Typically, the HOA still wants you as the owner to pay directly. So I've always kind of seen it where you pay. There's also, when you get into the taxes, and I'm not a tax professional, but talk to a tax professional. Typically, those HOA fees are deductible. So you'll want to pay those.
So I want to pay those. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess the other caveat to the lease question ahead, to go back to that, is I would always write in, if there's a fine, that they're responsible for the fine, right? And so that's maybe some of the language you would ask, specifically. I always write something like that into the lease, hey, you keep your trash can out there and there's a $50 fine. You're responsible for any HOA fines while you're there. You're not cleaning up your front yard, whatever it might be, they're paying the fine.
Gotcha. That's a good tip. Okay, cool.
And I have some language I can share with you too, and that I've used in leases.
Okay, yeah, that'd be sweet. The other thing I'm thinking is I obviously want to structure the finances well so that they're flowing through. My main thought right now is to do an LLC that owns the property, and then obviously have a bank account there so that the tenant pays into that bank account. Out of that bank account goes into the mortgage and the HOA stuff and any other overhead or repairs or things like that. What's a good, how big does that account need to be? Right? When can I start paying myself, or when can I start using that or funding other things, or where do you keep that account at?
Yeah, that's tough, man. I mean, these are always going to depend on your comfort level. So I always think, some people will have multiple accounts where they put some money away every month for CapEx. I've seen percentages where they do that. Other people that will just have kind of a basket of money for all their properties in one. So I think about what are the big things, and it depends. On a condo might be different, because does the HOA cover the roof? Do they cover the AC? Do they not? So I want to have my big capital expenditures, or an AC unit, 10 to 15 grand, or a new roof, 20 grand, right? So in a single family rental might be different. I'll keep a lot more in a single family, because of that potential for roof. And also, if you just got a new roof, maybe you're not going to have some of those concerns. So I don't tend to pay myself out until that account is pretty well established, because then I never have to worry about it. So it just depends where you're at. Are you going to be living off this? Or if it's like, hey, I want to get this stabilized and set up in the next 5 years, and then I'm going to reap the benefits of that property for the next 5 years. So I tend to think more long-term in these and say, I never want to have that, oh crap moment where I need a new roof and I got $5,000 in the account and now I'm pulling out $20,000 of my own money, because I want to operate it like a business. And so within that, the business has to have enough to keep the lights on and to keep it operational. And so I'm always kind of keeping that, I would say somewhere between 20 and 50,000 per property, but really it depends. Do I know that I've had 20 years on this roof and I'm going to need a new roof soon? I'm going to keep, more of that higher end.
Up. Yeah. That makes sense.
Where if, a house I just went in, I just remodeled it, I just put a lot of money into it and it's really turnkey, I might be able to go with 10 or 20,000. But I also like to have my holding costs in case I don't have a renter in there, or I got to turn it over and there's a month or two I got to hold those costs over. So I hate those it depends questions, but it's really like, what's your comfort level? Some people will say, 3 or 6 months of total expenses. And I think that 6 months is kind of the minimum for me, and I'm a little bit more conservative.
That makes sense. So you're basically kind of providing yourself your own insurance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And obviously now with insurance, like, how do you typically set that up? Because I know when we talked before, you kind of mentioned, like, I don't want you calling me about the toilet in the middle of the night, and I think that was a really good tip that I think would be good and helpful for the audience. But I talk about that a little bit and how you set that up, because I think that was cool.
Yeah, so I think two things in that is, like, one, just your general insurance. You want to make sure you have your renter's policy, and then you want to make sure that your renter has renter's insurance as well. So, like, I require them to provide me proof of insurance, renter's insurance. And then I also have a blanket policy over my rental that just covers those what ifs, right? And those are pretty cheap. So just an extra $1 million, $2 million on top of those on some of my longer term rentals. And then what I do for things that might go wrong in the house, we talked about, I'll have a home warranty that I pay for, so that those individuals, if there's anything wrong at the house, right? Like we talked toilet, well, they can call the home warranty company, have it fixed, and in the rental, I have them pay for the maintenance fee. So they can call the home warranty company, they can schedule it with themselves, and then they just have to pay that fee. And it's really puts, I feel like, tenants at peace of mind that if anything goes wrong, like, it's already covered. Like, it's going to be $65 or whatever that maintenance fee is. If it's something more, it's going to be, covered from myself. But it just makes sure that they're at ease that, hey, if my fridge goes out, if the AC goes out, nothing's a fire when you're doing the rental properties. If it's a true fire, call 911, right?
Right.
But a toilet, call the home warranty company. And then I just always make sure that they give me something written. It's not a text, it's not a phone call, that they email me with the service issue. And when they have to call these home warranty companies, it's trackable, it's traceable, and those people have invoices that then I can follow up and also write those things off if I need to at the end of the year.
That makes sense. It probably also gives the tenant a little bit more like, hey, I'm not just renting from some dude that decided he's going to try and be a landlord. Like, there's an infrastructure behind this, and there's like other people to call, and I'm not just waiting on, this guy to come and fix my toilet.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. I feel like it's a little bit more professional, like a property management company is going to have their, service people,
maintenance people, and all
basically
that kind of stuff,
a home warranty gives you all those service people, right, with one phone call.
Very cool. How often do you so you got a great tenant in, maybe they're on a year or two long lease. How often are you touching that? How often are you talking to them? How often are you going onto the property? Is it just see you in 2 years, or is it I'm assuming it's not that, but I'm assuming it's probably also not weekly you're over there, in their face.
I think tenant screening is really important. I mean, that's really where you got to start with this question, is make sure you screen incredibly well so that you're picking the cream of the crop tenants. And even then, you never know, right? So
Right.
I tend to put them in there. I touch base with them maybe 1 month in, just make sure everything's good. And at that point, I'm not checking out the property. But then probably within 6 months, if it's a year, I want to check halfway between. Just make sure, again, it's a big asset, right? And as long as you give them notice, usually 48 hours, specifically in Arizona, you can access your property. And, I don't make it where it's a fire. I might let them know, and I tell them that up front in the lease. I tell them that up front when they check in. Hey, I'll be by every 6 months or so just to walk the property, make sure there's nothing wrong, make sure I don't need to fix anything. I really like to be proactive. And I make that like a service for them that, hey, I want to make sure that you're as comfortable as possible, that the property is in as best shape as possible. So I walk it. There's things that you're not going to worry about as a renter that I'm going to worry about as an owner. And I just have those conversations with the individuals, and I've never had any issues. And if they have concerns, that's probably a red flag in your tenant screening that maybe this isn't the right individual for me.
Right.
But to each their own. I mean, I'm never going to go in there every 2 months or 3 months. I've really been lucky with, knock on wood, with tenants that they've been pretty good tenants, but I'm pretty strict on screening them.
Makes sense. When you set up the initial, because obviously you want to protect yourself from a bad tenant, right? And so you set up the initial, you have like a security deposit. Do you typically set it up where they pay first month, last month, and security deposit? Are they just doing a security deposit? If so, like, what's a ballpark for a security deposit? What's reasonable to ask for?
Yeah, I mean, I am that individual that typically asks first month, last month, and security deposit, all 1 month's rent, right? I keep it clean and easy. I realize that's a huge amount of money for most renters, right? Because they usually
that probably
barely
helps with your screening process too.
It helps with the screening process if they have that money. I've seen some people that will allow like first month, last month, 50%, this month, 50%, or they'll do kind of where they have to pay it, but it's over maybe 2 or 3 months.
Okay, spread it across. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I might be reasonable and have a conversation with the individual if they needed to do that. But again, I want to make sure they're going to be able to pay the rent. So if they don't have 2 months rent, I'm a little nervous that they're going to come out short, or a situation happens or a bigger bill happens, and all of a sudden, my tenant's not paying rent. So that's what I asked for, and I've never had an issue to date in my properties.
Very cool. This is maybe going a completely different direction, but so we're getting her condo ready to be rented, obviously. So I'm actually getting my house ready right now so she can move in, and then we'll get her condo ready so that we can rent it. Right now it's got carpet in bedrooms. It's got tile in the rest of the house. The carpet's pretty rough. So I'm trying to make a decision: carpet out, tile in, carpet out, laminate in.
Yeah, laminate, like it just, the LVP or whatever, like that's my go-to. But I think you can go super cheap and just throw new carpet in there too. So like if you already have tile and you're like, hey, the bedrooms are carpet, people like carpet, just know you're gonna have to carpet clean it. You're just gonna have to replace it. It's just one of those costs that you have to consider. Hey, every 5 years in a rental, I'm gonna have to flip this out, and that's gonna, but the other option's more expensive. So it's do I want to never have to change it out, or do I want to change this out every 5 years, incur a little bit bigger cost now, or a smaller cost now, but know that that's going to hit every 5 years? I'm going to have to change that carpet out. Okay. So I'm a fan of no carpet in any of my rentals, but I'm usually going in there and kind of doing a full gut or a full transition of the property, and maybe even living in it, house hacking it before I rent them out. So these decisions always depend, but I'm a fan of no carpet in rentals personally.
Very cool. I think the only other thing, I've already replaced a bunch of faucets and things like that. I may do some light fixtures and some paint and things like that. Any advice as I maybe pick fixtures or paint? Is it better to
durable?
Just durable is what you want.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Or something cheap and easy to replace, so don't put in the most high-end things because they're going to get wear and tear, and they're not going to take care of your things as nice as you would typically take care of your things.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, I mean, so I don't want to break the bank and buy the most expensive thing that's durable, but I want to be reasonable that, hey, if that faucet goes out or if that breaks, yeah, I can replace it pretty reasonably and pretty quickly. And I might be able to find something that looks similar, because that's the other thing is, are you going to be able to replace that?
I was
really
just going to
unique,
ask, does it matter that the fans match and stuff like that? Because I know that's kind of important in some like resale stuff. But I
think in resale, if you're flipping, is different than like a renter is not going to say, oh, there's 2 different fans in the 2 bedrooms, so I'm not going to rent this place. But if they say the fan doesn't work or there's no light in the fan, then
it's more function over form. Yeah,
for sure.
Makes sense. Cool.
All right, man. Well,
yeah.
Any other questions?
No. What did I not ask you that I should have asked you?
That's a good question. I think it goes back to screening from the very beginning, and then how active do you want to be within these properties, right? Do you want to have a property manager? You're kind of stating, and going one way of saying you're going to do everything, but I think a lot of our audience would be like, hey, I just want to hire a property manager. And I think in those respects, again, screen your property managers. What kind of assets do they manage? Are they typically condos? Are they homes? Or do they manage in that area? Are they bumping up rents every month or every year? Get referrals for property managers. That's a really important one. And then, what is the best class? Is it a long-term rental? Is it a short-term rental? There's so many different options out there in property. So just, do your due diligence and make sure that you're optimizing that asset, because that's what it is. It's making you money. So it's an asset and you want to optimize it. There's pros and cons of long-term and short-term rentals and different things you can get into, especially with HOAs that might restrict. But I think you did a really good job asking questions. I mean, I think really common questions that a lot of people have. But every situation's a little unique. So if I can be of any help to anyone else, feel free, hit up Andrew. But yeah, it's, kind of individualized.
I'll be able to tell you, 6 months from now what I screwed up and what I wish I had done differently. We can
we'll have you back
again.
on. Yeah. And then I'll ask you all the questions.
There you go. Yeah, I'll be an expert by then. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Chris Hallam of Simplicity Lending Group and powered by Nexa Mortgage. I'm a trusted and experienced loan officer who will work with you to find the best mortgage options for your needs. From first-time homebuyers to experienced investors, I have a wide variety of loan options and competitive rates, which makes me the perfect choice for those who are in need of creative financing. Contact me today and take the first step towards financial stability.
All right, Andrew, you ready for the hot seat?
All right, I'm ready for the hot seat. Bring it on.
I love it. All right, what is one book you'd recommend to someone wanting to know more about real estate investing?
So I can't come to one book, man, but I'll give you a couple really quick. Remarkable by Dr. Randy Ross. It's not necessarily about real estate investing, but just like business and entrepreneurship in general. Do Over by John Acuff, same type of thing. Do Cool Shit by Mickey Ardwal. Again, just said she built pizza restaurants, but entrepreneurship and just like fun and cool stuff. And then the last one I wrote down is called Mastery by George Leonard. He's actually a martial artist, but also a long-term real estate investor. And so he kind of melds the two, which was right up my alley because I've been involved in martial arts for a long time. So
love it. Yeah, a couple of those I have not heard of, so I'm gonna have to.
I was trying to find something like I can't just come on and say Bridge Dad. Everybody's gonna say that.
Well, you could, but
yeah,
I love the new ones. I love the new ones.
Yeah.
What is your favorite productivity tip, trick, or some sort of time saver app that you like to utilize?
So I don't have a specific app for this, but Gantt charts are like my freaking jam. And so whenever I have a big project, I'm actually like using one right now. I'm using Monday.com. There's some pros and cons to it, but I was like, my brother moved out I'm getting ready to like get the house ready for her to move in. And I'm like walking around the house, and on my way to fix one thing, I noticed 3 other things that are broken. And I'm like, okay, I've been walking around the house for 2 hours and I haven't done anything. And so I sat down for an hour, listed everything out, organized it, Gantt charted it out. Now I have dates and times that I'm going to do each of these things. And like, I start knocking stuff off the list. And so, yeah, any type of like Gantt chart tool or something like that, where you can kind of do that process, is super helpful when you have a lot of big stuff to do.
Yeah. Or like any kind of renovation, I think like when you're flipping a home, a Gantt chart's like wonderful to kind of just keep on track of things and know timelines for everything. So
yeah, right now we have one for house stuff and one for wedding stuff. So it's kind of like in tandem.
Oh yeah, the wedding stuff's way more in depth and involved for sure.
She owns that one. I own mine. I have some to-do lists on hers. She has to-do lists on mine. But yeah,
love it. What's your biggest real estate mistake or failure, and what did you learn from that experience?
So I got into some stuff with some partners, and we were doing some flips and some rentals and stuff like that, and I was very young and very new. I didn't know anything. I didn't have any money in it. It was just like, hey, if you help us with the books, we'll give you a small percentage. And so I thought, like, how could that be a bad thing? And it turned out it was kind of a bad thing. I mean, I obviously learned a lot, but because I was not on the hook and responsible for a lot of things, I was just assuming that other people were doing them. And so I think if you are going to be in a partnership, and even like when you were talking about having a property manager, like, trust but verify.
Yeah.
And I think that's just super important. It at the end of the day, it's still my credit. It's still my reputation. It's still my everything. And so it's like, if you're going to have partners, screen them well, but then also like trust but verify, follow up with them, go walk the property, even if you have a property manager. I think it's just important to make sure that you still have that responsibility.
So true. So true. All right. Last but not least, if you can be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Dude, this question is like,
it's tough.
Being a good dad.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I'd love to like make a mark on the world and like, start the next Tesla or whatever it is, it's like the stuff that's important is being a good dad, being a good husband,
That's your biggest legacy. It's funny. My wife, Erin, just kind of told me that. She's like, what bigger legacy are you going to leave than your children,
Yeah.
And it's so true. And you are a great dad. I've seen you in action, friend.
That.
And I've learned a lot in my own fatherhood from you. So I appreciate it. The best place for a Hot REI community to connect with Andrew is on Instagram at Andrew Linderer, and I'll make sure to include his contact information in our show notes. Man, Andrew, this is fun. Thanks for joining me today. And, I hope our audience got something out of me answering some random questions about rentals, but I think we really wanted to focus on a normal situation that happens, right? You get engaged, you get married, you kind of walk into a rental property, and, what are some things you should consider? What are some things that you should do before you rent out one of your properties? Hope we were able to help you today. And thank you for tuning in today, and commit to taking action this week to move your investing forward. Take care, and God bless.
Thanks, Travis. Have a good one, man.
Thank you for listening to the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast. Check out our website, hotrei.com, for additional content and resources. And please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review so we can continue to bring even more value to others through real estate investing.